Hey folks, it's Community Kevin here with the Real Anglers Fishing Show, and I wanted to give you a quick little video tip on some of the gear that you might use out here in Oxnard and Ventura County when you're fishing. Everything from surf fishing, pier fishing, jetty, and also on the sport fishing boats. Where we live at in this area, you have something called an upwelling, and that's where the northern current comes down that's cold and meets the warm current here in our backyard with an upwelling. It brings up a lot of plankton and nutrients in the water, so you get a lot of diversity of species in this fishery in our backyard. So there's three kind of seasons that we fish with out here, especially when you're fishing off of a boat or in the summertime. That changes, right? Because the warm water comes up, and you might be fishing shallow water, anything from 20 feet to 130, and then you have the spring, early spring, and the winter months that have regulations. And sometimes when those regulations switch, people will show up out here to fish but not bring the right gear. So let me show you a couple of setups that we have to show you. One of my first things I would say is if you are going to go on a sport fishing boat, a big mistake that I see as I work on these boats is people will make a reservation and get right on the boat and not call to see the gear that they're going to bring out if it's going to work at that time of year. So I highly recommend that you give a phone call to the landing that you're going to go out of, and also stop in there and check in to make sure the gear that you have is appropriate for that type of fishing. I've seen countless times where people get on the boat with the wrong gear, it doesn't work in this area, and then they don't catch any fish, and they want to think it's either the landing's responsibility or the boat because, again, they don't have the right gear. So we're going to take a minute or two to just show you that, okay? So let's say you're out here in the wintertime, and in the summertime, you'll be fishing something more like this size, maybe like 25 to 40 pound test, anywhere from 1 to 16 ounces, right? That you could fish with that, white sea bass, halibut, and rockfish. Same with this little spinning setup. You might be more used to seeing a spinning setup like this, a combo with something, 12 to 20 pound test that you could fish for. Barracuda, bass, rockfish, calico bass, stuff like that, halibut that you could use too more. This is more something that you would use in maybe the spring and summer. Also, this is what you might use in the spring and summer. Another spinning type of reel with maybe 8 to 10 pound test, up to about 12 pound. For casting lures and fly lining a sardine or an anchovy using live bait, you might use something like this to come out. Or if you're more experienced fisherman, maybe a bass reel and a bass combo, just like this, okay? Now, all three of these you could use also off the pier, the jetties, and the surf. But this one right here, maybe not so much unless maybe you're shark fishing, okay? But this one right here, what I see happen a lot in the wintertime is people will show up with gear like this, and the regulations from the Department of Fish and Wildlife, you cannot fish under 300 feet. So you can't put a 16-ounce sinker in that much line if we're fishing 400 or 500 feet. And again, that's just restrictions due to the Department of Fish and Wildlife. And every fisherman that's gonna fish out there, you have to know the regulations and know what kind of fish you're catching, right? So that's very important. Okay, if you come out fishing, again, if you're not on a boat where they might know the species and the fish that you're catching, and you're fishing off of the pier, or you're fishing off of the jetty, or you're fishing from a dock, again, the regulations in which you're allowed to keep might be different again in that time of year. So again, it's always good to know. Have the Department of Fish and Wildlife app or check it out online or Google it, but it is your responsibility to know the regulation, the size, and also your fishing license. One of the questions we get a lot, do I need a fishing license to fish out here? If you're gonna fish on the pier, you do not need a fishing license. That's the only place where nobody fishing needs a fishing license. But if you're gonna fish from the shore, a boat, anywhere else, you have to have a fishing license if you're 16 and older. Kids under 16 do not need a fishing license. So a couple quick tips. Call the landings that you're gonna fish out of and ask them what do they recommend. Also to stop in the landing if you make a reservation and make sure the gear that you did bring down is appropriate for what we're fishing for. Or you could rent a rod from the landing itself. So again, we want to make sure that you catch fish, have a memorable time out here in our backyard. But since we have this ecosystem back here, we do get fisheries that shift, fish that migrate in, fish that live here, rockfish, surface fish, shallow water rockfish. So the proper rod reel combo setup is one of the most important things that you're going to have. And I see people come out on our boats all the time that are either outgunned or they're using stuff that might work in Alaska or another part of the state that doesn't primarily work right here. So do yourself a favor, take a couple of minutes to make sure you got the right gear, the right outfit, a phone call, or checking in with the landing when you get out there. Or if you come out here and fish from a pier and you bring your own stuff, again, you can fish from the surf, the pier, sometimes on the boats or the jetties with the majority of this type of stuff here, anywhere from 8 to 15 to 20 pound test. And another tip is make sure you listen to the crew and the deckhands. They're going to give you the best advice that you need when you're on a boat. They do it every day. You don't want to figure that out at noon when you don't have any fish in your bag. That's what they do for a living. And make sure you always bring cash with you as well. Cash is king on a boat. And make sure you tip too. If you have any more questions, check out communitykevin.com or Angler's Fishing Show. But this should pretty much get your rod and reel combo set up when you go out fishing on a boat or here locally.